One final question.
Hi. Mr. Benjamin, earlier you were mentioning how popular World War II was, and certainly we were fighting against a man who, in your words, could certainly have taken over the world.
Do you doubt it?
I'm not doubting that at all, but I think it's very interesting to point out, though, that the year of D-Day, that fully 40% of this country still favored a negotiated peace with Adolf Hitler. And that fact, seen in today's context, and certainly in the polarizing media climate that we live in today, isn't it true that A, we can never have a truly popular war in America, and B, that just because a war isn't popular with a large section of Americans, that it's not necessarily an incorrect fight?
Let me say this. First of all, World War II. Listen. You say 40%. I don't know. I think World War II is about as popular as war is going to get. The question is not whether this war is popular. The question is that listen, no, okay, but I'm saying that's not the question for me, all right? That's not what I'm concerned with, all right? What I'm concerned with is the fact that a crime was committed, that the President of the United States went before the Congress and lied. He knew when he said this that what he was saying wasn't true. All right, listen, if you don't think he knew it, listen, if y'all don't think he knew it, I tell you what you do. Tomorrow, go to the Black World Today, tbwt.org, and read my piece and see that I describe everything that they now admit, right? Right down to saying that if you want to look for nuclear weapons, go to Pakistan. I said this before the war. Now, I'm swift on the cap, but damn, I ain't that smart. You think that I could figure this out? Me, a lone colored man working with one little computer up in Harlem, and Bush got $44 billion worth of intelligence and he couldn't figure it out? It's bullshit. He lied. So it's a crime. He should be right now impeached. And if the Democrats win the House, he will be impeached because the chairman of the committee, whether you like it or not, John Conyers, has already written a book which is coming out stating the case for impeachment, and he will be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. I think a crime was committed, and not only I think a crime was committed here, and I think a crime was committed in international law. He says that Iraq, forfeited their sovereignty. Everything that he said about Iraq, the United States has been guilty of in its history and worse. You understand? So if their sovereignty should be forfeited, so should this country's sovereignty.
But can I consider that your closing statement?
I don't know. I will make the closing statement when it's over. All right? When you get ready to leave. All right, go ahead.
Just to the last question, if I may.
I don't even understand the question.
I'm not sure the question was specifically for me, but with your permission, because it helps me answer an earlier question about the culture of fear. I don't think there was the smallest chance of Adolf Hitler taking over the world, not even with the support of Japanese and Italian imperialism. I think fascism was absolutely doomed to defeat because it was based on an irrational, racist, mania, paranoia theory and behaved in a self-destructive manner. But it didn't
stop American slavery from lasting 250 years, and it was based on the same thing. Same ideology.
But it did have to be fought.
The same ideology.
It did have to be fought and resisted. It's because I'm sure that the same will be true of the irrationality and mania of Islamic jihadism, that there can only be one outcome to a war. I must remind Dr. Benjamin that he said about the jihadists that they were fighting against European colonialism and its legacy. I think you'd have a hard time selling that to the people of Afghanistan, half of whom were immediately put under slavery, the female half by the Taliban, the rest of whom had to live under the direst poverty and repression, where even music and reading were abolished. If you want to ask yourself what the Islamic jihadists have in store for you, look what they did to the people of Afghanistan. Look what they did to the Shia minority, the Hazara tribe of Afghanistan.
Let me just explain one thing.
Wiped them out. Now,
I'm not an apologist.
Fascism has to be fought, but it doesn't mean we have to be impressed by it, or those who euphemize it either, and use soft words to describe nasty things. Okay? That's all I wanted to say.
I'm not an apologist for the Islamic jihadists.
Yes,
I agree with Frantz Fanon. The setting up of an Islamic state is a return to primitive medievalism, all right? I'm not in any way a supporter of Islam. You understand? So don't mistake me for a supporter of Islam.
So the jihadists were anti-colonialists?
Yeah, I'm not. There's 1 million black slaves in the Islamic world right now, all right? I've been to meetings, with the abolitionists. I've heard Arab slave owners today talk about, and I'll tell you one thing, Stanley Crouch was there, he's in here, we were up at Columbia at one of these anti-slavery meetings with all these Arab former slaveholders was getting up saying, how sorry they were. But they said, one guy said he lived all over the Arab world, and everywhere he went there were black slaves, except in Iraq, because Saddam Hussein abolished slavery while he was there with his father, who was a diplomat. All these other states have black slaves. I'm not any friend of the Muslims, so that's, don't put that on me.
The quality of the unproductiveness of this discussion has been unrivaled, certainly in my moderating experience, and I would love to bring this to a close.
One of the reasons why it's been unproductive is because you interject yourself into it too much. You should have just let me and him go at each other.
Perhaps. Mr. Hitchens, would you like to a closing statement?
I sense that the demand for it is somewhat slack. As is my willingness to... I think I'd be repeating myself. I think I've been reviewing it in my mind. I think I made the points I wanted to make, sometimes twice. I think I'd be boring you, and even worse myself, if I went on this way. I just think, though, because I agreed so much with what Playthell Benjamin just said about the urgent question of slavery and genocide of black Africans at present at the hands of Islamic jihadists, not just in Mauritania and other countries, but in Darfur, in southern Sudan. Am I to take it? I must ask this question to the audience, really. It's a rhetorical question, if you will, but I'll ask it, obviously, to you too, sir. That if the United States government did what many of us in Washington have been urging it to do, and to intervene in Darfur against slavery and genocide against black Africans, would you set up the cry, we had no right to do this because we once invaded Nicaragua? Would that be all you could say if we decided to help our African brothers and sisters from genocide and slavery? There seem to be people who said, if I wasn't wrong, there were fools in this audience who applauded sentiments like that a few moments ago. I just think you should hear what your own arguments sound like when they're played back to you. I think you deserve that. But don't worry, we didn't do that in Darfur. We said we'll do it Kofi Annan's way this time. Didn't we? And we negotiated the time away, and we gave them all the time in the world. And we invited French and German envoys and inspectors, and the killers used up the time, and you know what? It's too late now. You can stop worrying about Darfur. They've all been killed. They've all been killed, so it's just as well the neocons never got a look in, isn't it? There you are. I would hold the mic up so you could be better heard if I could. You deserve it. Good night now. That's all I want to say.
Mr. Benjamin, perhaps you also feel that you have made your points and do not want a closing statement.
No, absolutely, I do not feel like I've made my points because I came here. Listen,
how surprising!
Listen.
I have the same feeling.
I came here to. Here's what I came here to do. I came here to do two things: to demonstrate, with the documents, you see, that this war was cooked up in a think tank and carried out by the people who ran. Most of these people in these think tanks stay in think tanks. But when George Bush chose...
I'm sure you said this before. I will stake my life on it.
You know what?
It was in the laboratory of Yaqub, I think.
You're the most intrusive moderator I've ever seen in my life. I mean, really, I don't understand it.
But am I correct?
Do you want me to talk or not?
I would prefer that you did talk.
Why don't you just shut up and let me say what I'm saying, all right? Why don't you do that, right?
Well, you don't mind if the rest of us go.
That's one point I want. The other point I wanted to make is
we
that
leave?
I wanted to have a scientific discussion of the nature of mass movements to show that what the United States is doing is in fact creative. Get on out of here. Get on out of here. Hey, listen. I want you all to know this ain't the first time somebody got up and ran out. You know what I mean? They did it on the radio. And get up and run out of there on the radio. You know what I mean? Yeah. I yank your
Thanks,
butt, but they
everybody.
can't hide.